Well, I don't know about you all, but I feel absolutely exhausted having listened to that. 52 marathons, geez, that's an incredible outcome. Folks, we're going to move straight into our next speaker, David Baccinelli, and I'd like to invite Mike Zagretta, Claims Manager from OnePath, onto the stage for our formal introductions. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. I'm equally exhausted after that talk. I feel like taping my legs just standing here. That was tremendous. My name is Mark Zagretta. I work with OnePath in Sydney and manage the retail claims team. I've been in that role tick over 4 years and I've been in the industry around 23. As you know, our industry is facing some significant challenges at present. Recent economic events and certainly the direct insurance business, there's a lot of cover available now, advisory business and proposed reforms which are certainly impacting on your businesses, and there are certainly people looking at the challenges ahead and thinking, possibly questioning their long-term future in the industry. Despite those challenges, there's still a need for consumers to receive good advice, your advice. We'll share with you some stories which indicate and demonstrate how true that is.
When you think about what the possibilities of what might happen, you know, if I hadn't have survived my heart attack, the impact to the family would just be, besides, you know, the death of the dad, the financial burden of having to move out and all the emotional trauma that goes along with that as well. You wouldn't know what their future would be. Having the correct insurance in place, you at least know that the future that you're currently planning for them can still take place. I was out training for, do a bit of running and cycling. I was training for the Gold Coast Half Marathon, and I was out at lunchtime at work doing a run, and I got a bit of chest pain. I just thought it was a bit of indigestion. But over the next couple of weeks, just walking to the train station and back again, the chest pain was just getting worse. I went to see my doctor, and she referred me immediately to a cardiologist, and then that afternoon I was checked into hospital.
The day that he was admitted into hospital, the nurses were laughing at him because he walked in with Otto on his hip, and like most people get stretchered into here or in a wheelchair.
And they did an angiogram, which is a wire up the femoral artery to check out how your heart is. They discovered a 100% blockage in one artery and a 80 to 90% blockage in another artery. 1
minute he was in a bed, and the next minute I was standing in this empty space with Otto on my hip, and just like, oh, he's gone. I thought, I'll just go and follow him. So I followed him out to the main corridor of the hospital and sort of feeling like a bit of a ninny, but just calling out to him, you know, I love you, and, you know, watching him disappear. And I had this hour of, what am I going to do and who am I going to call?
It was really, really quite a surprise, you know, because I was quite a fit person. I look after myself, I eat well, I don't smoke, I don't drink excessively. It took a while for it to actually sink in. I think it was, you know, I woke up at 2 a.m. the night that I was in hospital and, you know, just I think broke down. The nurses were wonderful, but you know, it's just you know, thinking about your family and, you know, the possibility of not seeing your kids grow up and all of those kind of things. It really sort of hits home that you know, it's yeah, not much fun. My financial advisor is David Baccinelli. I've had David as a financial advisor for about 5 years. One of the first things you think of is, you know, how we're going to pay the mortgage and, you know, pay the visa bills and all of those kind of things that are coming in the doors.
I hadn't even thought about trauma insurance, but Simon's, I think men think differently, and he was thinking really practically.
We rang Dave to see if we were covered for our insurance for this kind of thing, so, and we were, which is good. So, you know, at least it takes that pressure off. I'm a contractor, so I don't get paid if I don't work. If we didn't have the insurance, we probably would have had to have remortgaged the house, I think. David helped us submit our application. He came over to our house and helped us fill out the forms. He also told us all the information that we needed to gather to submit the application. I mean, I was lucky I survived my heart attack. If I had have died, you know, it'd be terrible. I'd be leaving my wife and kids behind, but at least I'd know that they would have been looked after financially.
We didn't know whether we'd get anything, we didn't know how much we'd get, and what we got was fantastic.
I didn't ever think I'd actually have to use it, but you know, it's great that it's in place. You know, it's like wearing a seatbelt. You know, you don't think that you're ever really going to have a car accident, but you don't drive around without that seatbelt on. So, if you're married and you've got kids and you've got financial commitments, having the appropriate insurance in place is absolutely paramount.
The man's name in that video is Simon Hall, and the man that sold him that trauma policy is David Bacinelli. He's here in the audience today. David, please welcome me on stage. Hi, mate. All right.
Cheers.
Brings back a lot of memories, I'm sure.
Oh, look, most certainly does. And for me, a very standout moment is Easter Thursday last year. Ready for holidays and ready to party with the family, and of course get a phone call. And on the end of the line was Jo, and she didn't have to say too much, but you can just tell by the sound of her voice that something serious had happened. And obviously with Simon, she told me that they were in hospital and he'd suffered this quite serious heart attack. So I suppose for me at that point, it really is just a call to action, and you just drop everything and you know, all I can offer her is reassurance and you know, let her know that, hey, we have insurance in place. My role now is really to step up to the plate and do what I promised you at the very beginning, and let's facilitate this claims. But initially what you've got to do is be a wife and be a mother and go and be with your husband. And then once he's out of hospital, we can, you know, go through whatever has to be done. Yep. Certainly a great standout moment apart from that is, you know, payday. Everybody loves payday, and had that big fat juicy cheque. And I rang Simon and said, listen, I've got a big cheque here, mate, for you, and he's ready to give me bank account details. And I'm like, hang on, we really got to honour this thing. And so I was around there in an hour and a bottle of champagne, and, you know, when you hand that client that cheque and they can see that investment that they made into insurance is represented by something that can give them the financial security that they really need at that point. I think it just, for me, evokes such deep emotional feelings, and it really takes you way past just an advisor and a client. You know, at the end of the day, I think we're all human beings, and what we do is such a special thing, and I really think that I feel it a very big privilege and an honour to be able to do that for people, and certainly in this instance to help Simon and Joanne.
David, I understand Simon at one point wanted to cancel his policy just prior to having the event.
Yeah, look, and I'm sure most people could probably relate to this. Had a phone call just end of 2010, and look, times are pretty tough. Everybody's struggling, you know, premiums are getting dear, and they wanted me to look at their insurances and say, hey, look, what can we do about this? So we looked at a couple of options, but I mean, Simon and Jo, they're just such beautiful people, and all our meetings have been more on life and great things. So I suppose we pushed that to the background, and they were telling me about this great adventure that they were planning, this 14-month trip around Australia with their 3 lovely kids. And we got out the maps and itineraries and basically chewed up the whole meeting, and by the end of it we decided to leave everything in place and we'd get back to it at a later stage. Well, it was only 3 months and I got that phone call, and thankfully patience had prevailed and insurance was in place, and you know, we hadn't had those changes, but we have reviewed things since, and subsequently, thanks to Chris, certainly gave me a great motivation to use level premiums, and yeah, everything now is on level premium.
And how is Simon now?
Look, unfortunately, you know, he does suffer a heart condition. He has got that for the rest of his life. But, you know, we chat regularly, and these days it's really all about their upcoming trip. They actually leave next week. They're heading north, and they're going to watch the solar eclipse, I think on the 14th of November coming up. They're going to fly back down to Brisbane that day. They're going to jump into their packed four-wheel drive, head off to Goondiwindi, watch the last sunset over Queensland, and then embark on this great adventure. And obviously all this has been brought forward because of their trauma claim. Now, this works. Joe's quoted by saying, you know, we're a 30-something couple who have decided that life is short, our family is important, and our time is precious. How true is that?
And David, I know you've got strong views on it, but how would you see most advisors' role at claim time?
Look, I certainly think it's important. It's the most important thing we do. Like, from woe to go, you know, it's the old adage that you're sitting there with a client and you're going over premiums and, you know, recommendations, and it's the usual thing that comes up. Look, mate, it's just not going to happen to me, you know, and I think we all think that. We all kind of think we're pretty bulletproof. I really have a belief that it's almost a genetic programming that we have in our brains that makes us veer away from you know, pain. Obviously, nobody likes pain. So, for that reason, you know, it's difficult to comprehend that it might happen to us, but unfortunately, we all know that it does, and statistics show that it does happen to people. And when I'm in that appointment with my clients, I say, you know, here this morning there was a chap that woke up and went to work. He had a serious car accident. He's sitting there in hospital right now. There's a lady who woke up this morning, went to a breast clinic. She was diagnosed with breast cancer. So, you know, it does happen. And these people, they woke up this morning and had absolutely no idea whatsoever what was going to happen. So it's very indiscriminate. And I think as advisors, that's really where it comes up, that we've got to talk to our clients. And the beautiful thing I got out of this conference so far is one of the many, but Maxie's, you know, we've all got a story, and we've all got stories, every one of us here. And I think helping our clients really smell the roses is so valuable, just to make them realise that, yeah, it can actually happen.
Yep. And David, I understand you've got a story also very close to your heart.
I do, and firstly, certainly thank you for everybody for wanting to listen to my story. We can get started. I'm here as an advisor, but I look back in my life, and insurance actually come into my life at an early stage. Back in 1983, I had this aspiration to become an electronics engineer, is to build a lot of amplifiers, etc., but got romanced into the idea of going into hairdressing. And I was probably a few months into my role of cutting hair, and a guy came in and talked to me about whole of life insurance. I figured that, geez, that sounds like a bloody good idea. So at a princely age of 17 or whatever, took out a whole of life insurance. Wasn't long after, and someone decided to say that there's this great scheme coming up called superannuation. You should really jump on board. So here I was, earning $97 a week, investing $10 into whole of life and superannuation. I had a passion for hairdressing. It was what I really wanted to do and what I loved. And I got involved in a regional competition in Sydney and was elevated to a national role after winning that. Won the national role and had the opportunity to represent Australia in the 1988 Youth Skill Olympics held at Darling Harbour. What a great honour to have that green and gold on your back and do something that you're passionate about. And I think passion is what we all love and what we all do here in this job, but you know, passion runs in different fields, and at the time that was certainly my passion. I went overseas after winning a scholarship with the Big Brother. I had a 4th place in the Olympics there and went to the UK, did a lot of travel, came back. Just before getting into the building industry, which I had done, I was hairdressing, and my advisor at the time, well, to-be advisor Nigel Element, discussed with me the need of income protection. So I, at that time, bought an income protection policy, subsequently went into the building industry. Now, one day, having a beer at home after work, watching Yarn Event on Current Affair in 1993, she's talking about these mad-ass people up in the Gulf earning a hell of a lot of money working on prawn trawlers. And I kind of figured, well, I think I can do that as well. So I got myself to Cairns and hitchhiked across from Cairns to Corumba, which was a bit of a tale. But I got to Corumba and basically on the wharf every day as the boats were coming in. And one boat came in and he unloaded 2 deckies because it was quiet, and I went up to him, and giant of a man, and I said, mate, I'm keen to get on board and learn the ropes. And he says, why the hell would I put you on? He says, I've just laid 2 guys off. And I said, well, I'll do this thing called a tucker trip, and it's basically you work for your board and your bed. So he said, well, we're out of here in an hour. He says, grab your swag and we're off. So back to the donga. On the way back to the trawler, I stopped at the post office, rang up the insurer, sent a cheque for 2 months' worth of premiums and jumped on board. What an adventure. My God, you work 24/7. Tell stories of that could take an hour, 2 hours, a whole day, but we unloaded 26 tonne in Darwin, probably 6 weeks later. He pulled me up in the wheelhouse. He says, mate, I don't know how the bloody hell I did it. He says, but to find one bloke like you out of 20 is a miracle. He said, we're going to chip in, we're going to pay you. He says, you've got a job on the sister ship. If you stuff up, I'm after you. So basically, no worries, Russell, I'm all good. Jumps on the next boat. And as I say, it was pretty hard work. These guys took it a little bit easier. But one day I'm lying in bed and I hear a bit of noise up on the deck there. So I race up. And the idea was we're deciding to pull this thing here in called a tri-net. And we basically dropped it into the water. We'd had a rope hooked onto it. And what happens is you've got a big winch. It's called a capstan winch or a niggerhead. They basically loop the rope around it. They pull a bit of pressure on it. This thing then lifts up out of the water. So I was standing here. My role was to gather all that net as it was basically coming over the gunnel whale there. So here I am, doing as I should be, pulling this net in. And at that stage, the rope basically slipped off the capstan winch and this thing here basically just swung round, hit me from behind, and it was just a massive headbutt straight onto this thing here. I had a punctured hole massively here and sort of looked down, had this huge handful of blood. So instinctively just sort of feel up to the teeth. Every tooth was facing outwards. I'd split the top of my mouth, the roof of my mouth, and I could basically swim everything in my head. At that point, they lay me down. I was certainly up there with the big fella, ready to play cards, and I was really in a peaceful place, and there's certainly no bright lights, but thankfully the guys rolled me over, and I was drowning in blood at that point. So it came to. We were probably 4 hours out of Darwin, and luckily HMAS Melbourne was on the horizon with a fully fuel-seeking helicopter. Turbines had just been rebuilt. He was there within minutes. I just remember the wind of the chopper, this guy clicking me to himself, and then up we went. Got me to Darwin, they stabilised me, brought me to Brisbane the next day on the flying doctors, and this is the lovely face when I arrived to my beautiful parents to see their son. It's looking quite beautiful. So since that day I've probably had 16 or more operations to sort of meccano set my head back together again. But look, the thing that drove me forward was the fact that I had my income protection. What it did for me was gave me financial freedom. Joined Brisbane Bushwalkers, didn't sit around, had that passion for life. Bought the toys that I wanted, the V8, motorbike, the boat. Went diving, thought, shit, this is great. I'm going to be an instructor and dive around the world. Girls, fun, sounds exciting. But I met my lovely wife, Jane, to be, and those ideas changed. So I hooked up with my insurance company and went through the rigours of doing the rehabilitation and did a business management. Anyway, I married in '97 and went overseas. And basically, luckily, my wife and 2 beautiful kids are here today. But yeah, that's a bit of my story anyway. I suppose I'll keep it short because of time. But you know, thank you for at least listening.
David, thank you very much for joining us on stage. Thank you very much. You've just heard 2 great examples of how advice and your advice can make a difference to people's lives, far beyond the health. It's around their legacy. It's giving them an opportunity to have a family and have a life beyond just existing. Now take a look at some statistics. Obviously these cover a whole range of things and it gives you an idea how many people's lives are impacted by health and events outside their control. And it gives you also an idea of how many people out there could be helped beyond those that you're dealing with today. think you'll agree those statistics are overwhelming. You look at them, and the numbers are huge, the amount of lives impacted, it's enormous. But having said that, people like David's story, Simon's story, they fall into those statistics, but they don't, the full story is never revealed, and I think we probably don't celebrate enough the amount of people that, obviously the good news stories get told and told often, but there's a lot of people who aren't as fortunate. I had a recent involvement with a claimant. I was literally sitting at a colleague's desk and they were working away. Their phone rang. I answered it. It was a young guy wishing to make a claim, a trauma claim. He didn't know his policy number, and we went through the basic details to work out what he had. He didn't know. Just in going, so he gave me his date of birth. It was 3 days away from mine, which is always interesting when you hear people that are very, very sick and they're your age. He knew, we went through it, and he knew he'd been diagnosed with a brain tumour called a glioblastoma. Potentially very aggressive, very dangerous and very life-threatening. I didn't ask him about the particulars of what he knew. Quite frankly, I didn't want to know. We went through the details, and literally at this point, the conversation when you're talking with someone who's been diagnosed with a brain tumour at the age of 41, you're trying to steer away from the difficult parts of the question, a little like the elephant in the room, very much. And those of you who've had that with a client calling you directly, you probably understand what I mean. Just at the end of the call, I offered to the guy that we'll pay the claim. Once all we need is a pathology report. Once it's in, we can pay it straight away. But for him, take your time. There's no hurry. Get it to us as soon as you can. Probably a fairly stupid comment in hindsight, but I thought that's a potentially nice way of ending the conversation and reassuring him that it will take place as soon as he wishes it to. He explained he's actually in far more of a hurry than that. His doctors have given him between 3 and 6 months to live. And his wife is 6 months pregnant, and all he wants at this point of his life is to see his newborn baby born and have his claim paid so his wife can take some time off work before she has to go back. His sum insured was $142,000, so hardly setting up life for the couple, but certainly enough for his wife to take a little bit of time off work. I must say, at the time, talking to him, my heart was probably beating as much then as it is now. There wasn't really much you could say, and to be truthful, I didn't say a lot other than we'll do our best. That's just an example of the types of events that we see every day. I sit within a team. A lot of young girls actually look after our trauma portfolio, and they get calls every day, young women, young men with families, young kids, a lot of them with young kids. I think David mentioned about the breast cancer situation. We see these every day. Many end well, just as many don't. They make up those vast amount of statistics that we've seen, and obviously every one of them has a story. In fact, many of you, no doubt in the room today, have a story similar to that of either yourselves or knowing someone close to you, in a friendship or personal relationship where they've had an event. It's why we're here. It's why we're here. Offering cover to people in that circumstance is not just about changing their immediate life. The life insurer can pay a claim. That's easy. But it's about their legacy. It's about their family. It's about their future. That's the part where you can have the biggest say. Just in closing, we know the role of advisor is tough. You will always come up against people with sicknesses and injuries. They will need your help. They will need your help with the product in terms of what cover they've been offered, and also, as odd as it seems, in terms of explaining what the cover's about at the point of claim. Most people don't know. They'll need help with the claim. What I'd ask you to think about for a minute is literally about your own clients, all of them. Just imagine if you had one of your clients call you and tell you they've had an event like the one I did. How do you want them to feel? Not only them, but how do you want them and their family to feel? Because that's why we're here. If you can just take a minute, there's some paper and a pen put on all the chairs when you sat down. Just write down in a couple of words, how do you want your clients to feel if they ring you and are telling them that they've got a life-threatening event? Write your name and address on the front of it. We'll post it back to you in 6 weeks' time. What we want to do is remind you about how important your role is and how important your role can be in your clients' lives. Not only their immediate life, but the legacy of them for them and their family. Your advice makes an enormous difference and can do, and obviously in Simon's case, it saved a life. As far as I'm concerned, that's something worth celebrating. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Thank you, David. Thanks for having us. Cheers. Feel the fear in my enemy's eyes. Listen
Well, I think it's a particularly timely reminder for the value of what we all do as advisors out here, and stories like that certainly touch a raw nerve with a lot of people, and I think it just makes us even more committed to the industry and the occupations that we fulfill in the marketplace. Now, folks, I know we're heading towards morning tea in a little bit, but I would ask all of you to stay in the room because we are now moving into, I think, one of the most important sessions of the whole conference. We're going to roll into two sessions here. One is we're going to be talking a little bit further. I'm going to invite Brad Fox in a minute to talk a bit further about the AFA Foundation, and we'll have a short ceremony on that. But also, we are also moving into the session now where we will be announcing this year's Michael Murphy Award winners. So please can you welcome Brad Fox onto the stage.